Learn if statements in JavaScript. Imagine that you are on a road with only one path that you can choose. You can, for example, choose to code or to watch Rick and Morty, and you know that if you choose one option, you will not have any time to another option, and this is a perfect example of JavaScript if statements. Quick note before we start, this notation marks means comments, the same as double slash that you can use. I just prefer to use these marks in order to separate title from common texts. So you still can use double slashes, but you know that this is the second way how you can put comments in JavaScript. Let's write our first if statement. This is one branch choice because we have only one row to choose, and you must start with keyword if. Then you should put parentheses, and inside of the parentheses, you should put the condition, your choice. In our case, it might be true or false, so let's put true. Then you should put curly braces, and I can open it with enter. And inside of the curly braces, I can write the action that I have chosen. For example, watch Rick and Morty. This is the path that I have chosen. So I put this in console log. If I connect it to the browser using HTML file and live server extension, I put go live button. We will see a new blank page where I can inspect it by right click and find a property inspect. And here I can choose console to see any changes in the console, and you can reload the page if you have any errors. And after that, we see that we have a line watch Rick and Morty. The condition in the parentheses might be also false. If I put false and save the file, you will see nothing in the console because it means that we don't choose this branch. If I don't choose this branch, if I don't choose this road, I want to show the program that I want to choose the second road, and in this case I can write a keyword else. After the keyword else, I should also put curly braces and then enter to expand curly braces. And right now, else statements means that if I don't choose first road, I choose second road. This is the rule, it always works. If your if statement is false, it means that you choose else statement. So let's write console log.toCode. In the console, we see learn coding from line 7. That is the line where we have console log. And you might see that there is small difference, like the program, JavaScript, try to show you the way that you have chosen. So you see that transparency of the line watch Rick and Morty is a little bit darker than the transparency of learn coding. And if I change false statement to true, you see that we have watch Rick and Morty in the console, and you see that our else statements are a little bit darker than the watch Rick and Morty. If we use true or false inside of the parentheses, the JavaScript can say you what branch you have chosen. Let's write one more console log, but after both these branches. Now I wrote independent action I'm hungry, and you see that it goes after all these branches, and we see the result in the console. So we see our first choice, watch Rick and Morty, and after that, I'm hungry. And this is independent action because if I change the true value to false, save the file, you see that our first line have been changed to learn coding, but our second line is independent. It not depends on your choice. So whatever you choose, you can learn coding or watch Rick and Morty. After that, you will be hungry. So it's independent action. Independent actions you can write after if statements. So you see that whatever choice I do, I anyway see independent action, I'm hungry. One more note that actually else statement is optional. So I can delete this. And now you see my choice is false. If I save the file, I don't see this line, console log watch Rick and Morty. I see only my independent action. If I put true, now I see my line watch Rick and Morty. But again, if we have false as our conditional statement and we don't have else statement, our program just skips these lines. So this is the same for our program as comments, and it will only print the line that is independent without if or else statement. Not always we use explicit true or if statements inside of our conditions. We can write some variable, for example, my choice, and I can declare this variable a little bit above. So let my choice equal to true. And after saving the file, I will see this line because my choice works as true in this case, and I can also write false. And you see that I have only independent action in this way. It works the same as to write false right here, but the difference that if I write false, explicit false, you see that JavaScript immediately understands that this line will not be printed. But if I write my choice, even though that my choice is false, JavaScript don't actually show any clues that this line will not be printed. Most of the cases we use variables inside of the condition statements because we want to change them. But in this case, don't worry if JavaScript don't show you immediately what the action have chosen. Let's look at another example. Imagine playing a game where the player must choose one of the locations. Player might choose a farm or a dungeon. Let's choose a dungeon. And after that, the player have new choices that depends on the previous choice. So in this location, in the dungeon, he might find a treasure or he might be killed by a monster. And the same thing on the farm. Player might choose the farm, and here he can find apples or he might meet a villager. This action depends on the location. In this example, player can't be killed by zombie on the farm. Also, he can't find apples or villager in the dungeon. So what if we want to write these dependent actions? How to do it in JavaScript? So let's start from our first branch. I write if keyword. Then inside of the parentheses, I write true, then curly braces. Let's say that true means go to dungeon. I write in the console log, you found a dungeon. And after saving the file, I can look at the console. We see a message, you found a dungeon, because our condition is true. I can write else statement right now, but let's finish with our branch. Let's write this branch that if I have chosen a dungeon, we can find a treasure or be killed by a zombie. Inside of the if statement, I create a new line and I write new if statement. If, let's put here true, then curly braces, and I expand them with enter. And right now, let's say that true means find a treasure. So I console log find a treasure. We see two messages. You found a dungeon and you found a treasure. But if I change first true statement to false, you see that we have nothing. Yeah, we see nothing in our console. So it means that when you write nested if statements, like in our example, we wrote if statement inside of the if statement, this if statement, second action, starts to be dependent on the first choice. So if you don't choose a dungeon, you will not be able to find a treasure or be killed by a zombie. So this is how we realize this in JavaScript. I will return back this to true. And let's add some variables. Instead of the first true, I write let my choice as in the previous example. So, and I put my choice instead of true. It should work the same. I control it with console and I see that, I see both lines. So it means that our first line, my choice, equals to true. Equals to true. And let's change second line to something like luck or lady luck. I change our second choice with lady luck. So it means that not our player choose what to find in the dungeon, but it's some kind of accident choice, Right now, of course, we can change it. So for example, to false. And if I save the file, we found a dungeon, but we didn't find a treasure. I change them both to false. And let's write our else statement. I write else statement for our first choice. So instead of the dungeon, I choose a farm. So I should find this yellow brackets. They might be with different color, but find that there depends to the first if statements. In this case, this is our last curly braces that has the same color as the first curly braces after my choice. So this is very important. And right here, write else. Then new curly braces, they're with the same color as first curly braces after my choice. I can expand them. And right now, what means else? Else means that we have chosen the farm. And inside of that, we have two choices: to find a villager or to find apples. So I start write new if statement. Here I can put true. And again, let's say that true means find a villager. I console log that you found a villager. I wrote that you found a villager, and let's check it in our console. Right now we see a message you found a villager, because in our first if statement, we have my choice. My choice equals to false, yeah? It equals to false. You can hover over my choice and you will see let my choice column and the value that it has. Right now it's false. Or you can see right here, it's false, yeah? It means that we need to go to our else statement. So inside of our else statement, which represent the farm, we have a new if statement with true. So true means that JavaScript should choose this branch, and this branch console.log the message that you found a villager. So it works as intended, and if I change my choice to true and save the file, we see that we have you found a dungeon. Because if my choice equals to true, it can't go to else statement. It doesn't exist in our file. So this is the same if our if statement is false. But I return it back by Ctrl+Z. And again, I can change it to false. Save the file. And I hope that you start to understand how it works, yeah? How we choose these branches depending on these actions. So let's also change true value in our second nested if statement to ladylike. In this case, our two variables controls all our choices, and we can change the value of ladylike to true. Save the file, and yeah, right now it works the same. And our final condition, our final else statement is to find apples. In second if statement, let's write else. And here I will console log you found an apple or apples. And I save the file, and right now I can see that you found a villager. Then our ladylike choice is equal to true, so we print this line. But if I change ladylike to false, save the file, you see that, okay, my choice equals to false, I go to this branch, and here ladylike equals to false, I go to this branch. And here you have console log you found an apple, what we have in our console. I also can add one line that you found a farm after the first else statement. So I add new line with enter, write a message that you found a farm. In this case, it's more clear that we will always have two messages. So if my choice is true and ladylike choice is false, I have you found a dungeon. I also forgot to add this last condition, be killed by a monster. After our first if statement, I see that I don't have else statement. And I can add console that you was killed by a zombie. If we look at our map, we have 4 different choices. So if I choose the dungeon, this is true in our case. And then, for example, ladylike choice is false. It means that we found a zombie, and we have 2 messages that we found the dungeon and then we are killed by a zombie. And the same with all other choices. So we have 4 different choices, and right now we can control them by these 2 values. It might seem challenging, so pause the video and try write the same code by yourself. And later you can compare it with my code, but this is really important to feel these branches, how they work, to create this simple map of different choices. Build a storytelling game in JavaScript using only if statements. This project is perfect for mastering if statements and for creating your first games that you might share with your friends. For this project, I will use a simple HTML file. We will not work with that, we will work with JavaScript file. Here you can see the title, that short storytelling game project. Before we start, I want to show you how to communicate with a player. JavaScript has a command confirm. It's very similar to console.log, but it will pop up messages in our browser instead of the console. I will write something like, do you want to play a game? And I save the file, I will go to HTML file, and I use live server extension to display our project in the browser. I press go live button, and right now you see that we have a pop-up message with do you want to play a game? Comparing with console log, we have two buttons, OK and cancel. And if I press OK, it will give me true value as the result. And if I press cancel, it will give me false value. So in this way, we can communicate with a player. Let's save the result of the confirm message in the variable. I'll create let user choice equal confirm. And then instead of the console log, I will use confirm to show our results. If I save the file, you will see that our first message is, do you want to play a game? And if I click OK, you have a true value in the message because user choice equals true. So then I can click any button. If I refresh the page, we will again have the same message, do you want to play a game? And right now I can click cancel and you see false value. For some viewers, this white screen might be too bright. So let's change the background color in our HTML file. We will make our background darker. After the head block, you can add new lines and create style block, style. Then press enter. It will create a block with two styled hashtags. Press enter to expand this block. Then just copy and paste this line. You don't need to understand what it means because this is a JavaScript course, but it changes the background color to dark gray color. Right now, if I refresh the page, you see that we have these messages, but our background is dark gray. Once you understand a confirm command, let's start from our game project. I will comment out these lines with Ctrl/. If I save the file, we see nothing in our browser, just a blank page. And right now we can start with writing our new confirm message. I write keyword confirm, then parentheses, then quotes, and inside of the quotes I can write any text, for example test. If I save the file, we see changes in our browser. I can click OK. So if you look at the project, you see that I have created several branches that you might choose, but of course you can create absolutely your own scenario. This is just for people who don't want to actually think a lot about the story, who want to practice on the mastering the if statements. I can just copy this message and use it in our confirm message. I will delete the text and just copy and paste our message. So if I save the file, you see that right now we have a message from the police officer that actually gives us a choice between kitchen and the gym. So let's create another confirm message that will explicitly ask the player about the choice between kitchen and the gym. I create a new line and write confirm. And then I will write some instructions, something like kitchen equals to OK. As you remember, we have two buttons, OK and cancel. I have to write some instructions for player, like if you click OK, it means go to the kitchen, and if you click cancel, it means go to the gym. So after OK, I can write gym equals cancel. But if I save the file, after the first message, you will see that we have this in one line, and this is a little bit like inconvenient. How to separate this text between two lines? For this we have \n symbol that makes the same as the enter. It just create a new line for the message. If I save the file, you see that after the first message we have beautiful like two-line message. And you can notice that after /n I don't use space, because in this case we'll have like both lines starts from the same place, from the same column. So if you look at our scheme, you see that after this message, we should make a new message depending on the user's choice. So it might be a kitchen or it might be a gym. So we might create it with if statement. I'll write if keyword. Then inside of the parenthesis, let's write true at this moment. Then curly braces. And true means kitchen in our case. And else means gym. So as true means kitchen, I will write a message for the kitchen. So confirm. And inside of the quotes, I will just copy and paste this message. So right now I can save the file and we will see that we have a first description from the police officer. I can press OK, and right now you have a message with the instructions like how to choose something. For example, kitchen is OK and gym is cancel. I will choose kitchen. And we have our new message with action go to the kitchen. I also see that I want to add here a new line because action go to the kitchen is something different from our text. So I will go right here and I will add a new line with this backslash and an. And if I save the file, I will click OK and OK. And right now you see that we have action go to the kitchen and then the text from the police guard. I think that it's a little bit easier to read. But right now we have one problem that instead of the user's choice, we use true. So let's save user choice to the variable. I might create a new variable like right here, like let user choice equal confirm message and then use user choice instead of true. So I will save the file and refresh the page and we should have the same messages. So I click OK, we have the instructions and OK, and yeah, we have a kitchen because in this case we have chosen the kitchen. I also might check cancel. If I choose gym, we don't have any messages more because we don't have if statements. Let's finish with our branch. Next choice that we have is actually to talk with a man or to eat a bowl of ramen. As you see, these actions depend on our previous choice. We should write them in the same if statement. I will add a little bit more lines just for readability. And then I will write a new confirm message with two choices. First choice is talk to a man. So it's OK. Then I write enter. And the second choice is chow down on a bowl of ramen. So I will copy this action. So we might check. I press OK, OK, OK. And yeah, you see a message that talk to a man, OK, and chow down on a bowl of ramen. And I forgot to write it equals to cancel. Right now we see these messages. It works as intended. And again, let's take it in the same variable. We actually don't need to use our previous user choice anymore. So I can just write user choice equal to new confirm message. And then I can use this in our new if statement. User choice. In this case, user choice true means talk to a man. And I will create a new confirm message. Again, I will copy and paste these lines. I will also create an enter. We can go over our story with just OK. And you see that we have action talk to a man. And this is Kyle and he is a cook. So, and then we have a new branch of choices. Right now, I hope that you start to understand how it works. So we will use the same pattern to go like deeper to our branch before we finish our game. I noticed one interesting thing. I actually use Alt-Z command to wrap our file. This is the reason why you see these messages over here. If I press Alt-Z, you see that this message is a one long line. But to wrap it with our sizes, you can press Alt-Z. This is just one setting that I have noticed I didn't talk about. And our next choice is to slice a tomato or to cook a ramen. I will create this new confirm message. Right now, inside of this second if statement, I will create some enters also right here. Then I will write confirm. And right now I can copy and paste this action or our choice. Slice the tomato. Yeah, I should put that this is okay because this is our instruction. Then I will create a new line, and the second choice that we have is cook the bowl of ramen. And it's equals to cancel. Let's test it. If I press OK, we have, slice the tomato with OK, or cook up the bowl of ramen, and I don't like this action word. I can delete it. And right now we have this clean 2 lines. You actually can put these instructions inside of one confirm message, but why I separate them? Because I want to give the player the concentration on the description. As you see, we have a description, and right now a player might just read it, and then you have another action with choice. So we just separate the attention of the listener, and this is the reason why I want to add several confirm messages. Right now, if we have chosen to slice a tomato, this is our first end of the game with the achievement like a young cook. So we can create a new confirm message with this achievement. But right now I see that we didn't finish with our previous confirm statement because we don't have a new if statement. So I will again save it in the user choice variable, and I can create our third if statement with user choice, and inside of this if statement I can write a new confirm message. Again, I will separate them with enter. I think that right now we can save the file and watch our first branch. This is our first message, and this is equals to police guy that gives us a choice between gym and kitchen. So I press OK. I will choose kitchen. And right now we see some description about the kitchen. So if I press OK, we have a new choice between talking to a man and eating a bowl of ramen. I will press OK, and we have a new message from this man that actually is a cook of this prison, and he asks us to slice the tomato. If I press OK, we see a new choice between slicing the tomato or cooking up a bowl of ramen. And here I will choose slice the tomato, and it should be the end of our game. And Kyle said that, this is one of the worst things that he has ever seen, but eventually we have our work in the kitchen. If I press OK, this is the end of our first branch. I think that let's create a second branch, and I think that from this point you will understand how to create this game and you will be able to finish it by your own. I should find action where Kyle asks me to slice a tomato. Let's find it in our code. In the second if statement I see that Kyle asked me to slice a tomato, and we have a confirm message with choices where OK means slice a tomato and else means cook up a bowl of ramen. It means that in the last if statement we can write else statement. That means cook up a bowl of ramen instead of slicing the tomato. I will create a new confirm message. And let's look at our scheme. Here we see that if you have chosen to cook a new bowl of ramen, Kyle says that you ain't been listening, Rocky, so get out of here. And we have an achievement like exile slime. I copy and paste it again in our confirm message. And also let's separate these lines with this symbol. Right now, let's check this branch. Let's quickly check our second branch. We start from the same window. I go OK and choose kitchen. So we have some description about kitchen, and we have choice to talk to a man. We have a new task from the Kyle. If I press OK, we're in the position of 2 branches. I will click cancel, which means that I will cook a bowl of ramen. And as you see, we have ended our second branch with achievement of exile smile. So it worked as it intended. At the end of the game, consider adding an independent action that displays a thanks for playing message. You might add it to every single branch, but much more efficiently to add it at the end of the file, because this is an independent action. Regardless of the user choice, we want to say thanks for playing. So I will go after all these if statements, create a new line, and create a new confirm message with thanks for playing. And if I save the file, we started from our first message. I can click OK, and we have our first choice. And as you remember, we don't have branch with Jim. So if I press cancel, we will see our independent message, thanks for playing. So I can click OK. Right now you have enough knowledge to finish this game by your own. And in the next video, we will learn about more advanced techniques of if statements with new code challenges for practice. How to compare in JavaScript. In JavaScript, we have different comparison operators that might help us compare different things. Let's write a simple if statement. Let's console log that this statement is true. It's just for clarity that we can immediately see the results in our console. If we are using literal true, we see this statement is true. And let's write else. And this statement is false. As you remember, if we're using literal values, the JavaScript can help us to immediately see the result. So we see the transparency of the first line is a little bit brighter, a little bit greater than the transparency of our else statement. What if instead of the true or false statements, we want to compare different things? For example, 10 equals 10. I used triple equal operator to compare two numbers. If I save the file, we see that this statement is true. From this example, we understand that this comparison returns true because we see the same statement that was when we had true statement. And that's how it works. It generally asks a question. So is this number equal to second number? And if they aren't equal, for example, I put 1, and save the file, we have that this statement is false. Otherwise, it returns false, so our else statement is activated. Using this operator, we also can compare strings, not only numbers. For example, I can write 10 and ask equal to cat. And we will see false because 10 is not equal to cat. This example is obvious, but what if I put 10 right here? We still have false value. So you should understand that if we are using triple equal comparison, objects of different data types are always false. Even though that it seems that this value should be true, it is false. And it's really important to consider where you're using this operator. Let's try to compare two strings, Bob with capital letter and Bob with non-capital letter, and we have false because JavaScript is case sensitive. It means that capital letters and small letters are different. To get the true, we should have the same data types and the same letters. Right now you see that Bob equals to Bob and it returns true, but if I change one letter to capital, we have false. Right now, let's talk about logical not operator or toggler or inverter. At this point, I will delete Bob condition and write true. If I save the file, we again see true. I can put an exclamation mark in front of this true to toggle the value to the false. If I save the file, right now we see that we have false, and we can read it as not true. Not true is false. And the same if I use false value, not false is true. The behavior is really simple. It just toggle the value or invert it to the opposite one. And we may use as many operators as want. I may put two not operator signs and save the file, but we will see that it returns to false. If we are using two not operators, it's the same as say not false. It's actually true. This is the reason why there is no sense to use more than one not operator, because it will return the original value. Right now, let's talk about the operator that is the combination between triple equal and not operators. Let's imagine that you want to compare two items. I will write dog equals to cat. And I have a false value because dog is not equal to cat. But what if I want to ask from the point that what if our first string is not equal to second string? If I use not in my speech, it means that I should use not logical operator. I can try to put it somewhere, for example, in front of the first word, and it seems that it doesn't work. Maybe I should use parentheses. Yeah, in the parentheses, it seems that it works. Right now it works as dog is not equal to cat. But we see that this structure is really difficult to read. What it actually does, it compares our two objects, then returns some boolean value of true or false, and then toggle it back to the opposite value, and eventually we have true. But as you see, it's difficult to read, and for these occasions we have combination of both these operators that looks much simpler. And if I save the file, we see that it works in the same way. So I can read it as dog is not equal to cat. Answer on this question is true. So that's the reason why I have true statement. If I put dog and dog, we can see false, because if dog is not equal to dog, but they're equal, that's the reason why this condition returns false. You start to understand how it works, and generally it's much simpler to use just triple equal operators, because it's easier to ask questions that don't contain not inside of them. Next group of operators are mathematical comparison operators. If you know them in the math, they're working in the same way. So this is less than, greater than, or less equals than, and greater or equals than. Let's start from the first two ones. We are typically using them to compare numbers. I can write 10 is less than 10. 10 is less than 10. And if I say the file, we have false, because 10 is not less than 10. And let's also talk about how to read it. This pointed end or smaller part show the smaller number, and the bigger part, this kind of mouth, shows the greater number. In this case, it's quite easy to read. If you don't know them, so you can always think about them as, okay, we have two numbers, as this smaller part shows to the smaller number, and this like bigger part shows the bigger number, so it should be true. But if I change them, right now you see that this is a smaller number and this is a bigger part, so it's false. Yeah, you can like spend time and think about them, especially if you are not used to these operators. And right now let's talk about second operators. This is more or equal to, and it returns false right now, but if I put 10 more or equal to 10, it should return true. Yeah, how it works, we can look at them as two different operators. So our first operator is greater, so I can ask a question, is 10 greater than 10? It's not. So I should check the second operator, that is equal. Is 10 is equal to 10? And I can say yes. Where we are using this operator, only one of the conditions should be true to return the all condition of true. One more example where I put here 4, and if I save the file, we have also true, because 10 is more than 4, yes. 10 is equal to 4, not. But only one condition should be true to return the true value that we have. When you're comparing numbers, you always should remember about 3 different outputs. If you want to compare two numbers, for example 10 and 12, it might give you 3 different outputs. 10 might be less than 12, 10 might be equal to 12, and 10 might be greater than 12. It's really important to consider always when you are comparing two numbers. You want to look at all these outputs that might be. Let's imagine that you have a program that compares first and second number, and if your first number is less than 12, or if your first number is equal to 12, it returns a smiley face, and otherwise we have only one output, when first number is greater than 12. In this case, it returns a motionless face or a Squidward face, yeah? This scheme consider all the 3 outputs that might be. And in the case where you want to reduce amount of outputs to only 1, as we have right here, it's better to use this scheme where you're combining operators less and equal together to get one condition, less or equal. Both these schemes work absolutely identical, and only one difference that we have, that In the second scheme, we should create only 2 if statements, and it's easier to work because we have 2 outputs and eventually we have 2 outputs. We don't need to consider the third if statement, we have less code and it's easier to read. Master if statements in an Akinator style JavaScript game. The idea that player write the word and Akinator pop up the messages with his thinking. For example, the first condition that the Akinator will check is that the player's word contains more than 0 characters. So in this case, he might write that you have a word, because it means that your word is not empty if it contains more than 0 characters. And otherwise, he will write a message that I know you didn't guess anything. And this is the first condition where Akinator might win, because your word is empty. Our next condition will be if the word's length is less than 7. It means that you made a word between 1 to 6 characters, because this is a chain of actions and these actions are dependent. As we checked in our first condition that the word is more than 0 characters, and right now we are checking that the word is less than 7 characters, it means that the range of characters from the 1 to 6. It's really important to consider that you should write dependent actions, and otherwise, if your word is more than 7 characters, Akinator gives up because the word is too big for him, too complicated. The next condition is the checking of the specific word. In this case, we will check the word carrot. So if the word is not carrot, the Akinator says that your word isn't carrot and why you don't eat enough vegetables. It's really important to use absolutely the same operator as his is described to practice with different comparison operators. And otherwise, if your word is carrot, the Akinator will write that your word is carrot and I know that I'm smart because he guessed this word quite fast. The next check will be quite interesting because we will divide our word into 2 sublists. Like if the word length is less than or equal to 4, it means that your word has characters between 1 to 4. Because as you remember our previous condition right here, we know that our word might contain only characters from 1 to 6. So the length of the word might be from 1 to 6 characters. This is the condition based on the previous. Right now we are talking about the higher limit. We put a new limit of 4 and this is less or equal. So it means that our higher limit will be 4, but our lower limit will be the last one that we had, so it's 1. And otherwise we have this remaining 2 possible lengths of 5 and 6 characters. In this condition, we actually divide our condition of 1 to 6 characters length into 2 subgroups, and then we'll have the last check that is the most interesting and complicated. If the word length is between 1 to 4, and if your word is Bob, that contains 1 to 3 characters, so it's absolutely possible. The Akinator write that I knew you made your name, and it was very easy. But otherwise, if your word is not Bob, he will say that like I tried my best, but your word is too difficult for me. Very similar check in the second subgroup. If your word is between 5 to 6 characters, and if your word is paper that contains 5 characters, is also suitable for this subgroup. Your word is paper. I know that you want to play rock, paper, scissors game. This is the condition where Akinator wins, and otherwise he will write absolutely the same phrase. Try to solve this code challenge by your own, but right now let's solve it together. I start from the first condition where I should check the word's length, and for that I need 2 variables. Actually, I need the variable of word. So let's write let word. Let's put something like, I will put empty string right now. So because I want to check this condition, but this is actually the variable that player might choose. I might even change this variable to player's word. Yeah, I think that player word is the best name for this variable. The second variable will be player's word length. As you remember, we should use the previous variable and just write dot length to find his length property. I also found that I accidentally put semicolon. For JavaScript, it actually means nothing, so you can delete them. I prefer to avoid them in order to have cleaner code. And right now, let's write our first condition. We have a variable of player's word length, and I can check that if this player's word length, that is number, I can also hover over this variable. I might see a data type of number. I'm sure that this is a number, and I might check that if it's more than 0, and then continue that. It means that you have a word. I wrote this condition. If our length is more than 0, I write a message. Right now, I will write this with console log. I also think that we might change this "you have a word" to "you made a word." Let's talk about our else statement. Our else statement means that the word's length is 0. So it means that we didn't guess anything. Like in our example right here, I will write else, and I will write a console log with the same message as here. I also might add an emoji if I want. If you want to add some emojis, you can find them, for example, on emojipedia.org. You might use other websites as well. I just use this because I know that I might find some emoji, click it, and then just copy this emoji and paste it right here. Right now I will use live server extension to run this project in the browser. I go to my HTML file and then press go live button. And here, if I inspect the page, I will choose a console. Right here we have two messages, the default message that live reload enabled and one fail. You actually can refresh the page, and right now you will see only the message from our console. As you see, my length is empty, so I guessed an empty word, and right now we have that I know you didn't guess anything with smiley face, so it works properly. I also can check other conditions. For example, I have carrot. Save the file, so you made a word. It works. When we have checked the condition, we might go to the next one, and our next one is to check that if the length is less than 7. Right now it's really important where I will write this condition, because if I will write this separately, it will mean that these actions are independent. I want to show you what happens if I will write it separately. The condition by itself is very similar to our previous one, but right now I'm using less symbol and I'm using less than 7. I might write the same message as here. Let's save the file. Right now we see two messages. You have a word, and then you have a word between 1 to 6 characters. That is true because I have carrot as a word and the length of this word is 6. But let's delete this word and let's use an empty word again. If I save the file, you see that I have else statement from the first condition, so I know you didn't guess anything, but then our second condition works and we have a message that you made a word between 1 to 6 characters. But right now we know that this is not the desired result. The reason why we have this message is because both these lines are independent. In the first condition, it checks that your word length is more than 0, and if it's not, it uses else statement and write it. We have this message. But then it goes here, checks as the second condition that if player's word length is less than 7, 0 is also less than 7. And this is the reason why we have this console. In order to check these both conditions, we should check it inside of the first if statement. I will just cut it with Ctrl X and paste it right here. If I save the file, right now we see only one message, because right here we check that if player's word length is more than 0, we go to the else statement and we absolutely ignore all the content that inside of this if statement. We will not even check the second condition right here. This is the most important and the most complicated thing of this code challenge. So right now I will add some spaces in order to increase the readability. Now we clearly see that these statements are separated. Let's continue with our else statement for the second condition. And our else statement means that our word's length is more than 7 and Akinator gives up because the word is too complicated for him. I should find my second if statement, my second condition, and right here I can write else. And I will write the same message in the console as I have right here. And again, if I want to use emojis, I will go to this website and find this pensive face or just sad face. Copy and paste it right here. I also want to use Alt-Z to wrap our file. So if I press this button, you see that our lines are wrapped. Right now my 10th line is separated into two ones. Again, let's check this condition. So if our word is more than 0 and if our word is else of this, which means 7 or more, so let's put something like, for example, some fancy word, and if I save the file, we have that you made a word. This is the message from the first condition, because the length of this word is more than 0, because the JavaScript checks all these three words as 1. And we see that, yeah, this length is more than 0. We have this first message, and then we have the second condition where we check that if this length is less than 7, but we see that this length is more than 7. So we have this else console log where Akinator gives up. Our next one is if the word isn't caret. It also should be after these conditions. We should also check that this word's length is between the possible range, because we might change this word to something else, but if we change this word to something like some fancy word, it will not be a proper condition because it's not satisfy our previous condition of the range 1 to 6 characters. I will write inside of our second if statement our new one. Right now I will check player's word directly. I will use not equal to operator to compare that this word is not caret. And inside of the quotes I will write caret. So if our word is not caret, I will write the same message as right here. After this condition, let's also find an emoji. So I see this thinking face right here, and I will copy this and paste into our code. Before I check it, I also want to write else statement. Else statement means that player's word is equal to caret. So, and in this case, I will write this two console logs. As I want to write two different console logs, I might use Alt Shift and down arrow to copy this line down. And right here I might change this message to I know I'm smart. Right now I have if and else statement, and I can check them by changing our input. Let's write the word caret. And if I save the file, right now we see several messages right here. The first that you made a word, which is the first condition of if statement. Then we go deeper and we have you made a word between 1 to 6 characters. And then we have else statement because our word is caret. This else statement provides two console logs and we see both of them. Your word is caret and I know I'm smart. Let's also change it to a caret with capital letter, because as you remember, capital letters and non-capital letters are different for JavaScript. Actually, our word caret with capital letter is a different word, and this is the reason why we have the change in the final message to your word isn't caret, why you don't eat enough vegetables. It works properly, and right now we can go further and write our next if statement. The next condition is interesting because we should separate our list into two possible words. Let's add some enters. We'll check our word's length again, and if it's less or equal to 4, this symbol means less or equal to 4, and as you remember, only one of the conditions should be satisfied to give the true for the entire condition. It means that if our word is less than 4, for example 3, 2 or 1 character, it will be satisfied, and if our word's length equal to 4, it will also be satisfied. Let's write this message. So right now I have a message that you have between 1 to 4 characters word, and otherwise I'll write that you have a word between 5 to 6 characters. Let's also check it. I might delete 2 letters, and right now we have car word that's length is 4. If I save the file, we see that you have a word between 1 to 4 characters. That is our first condition. Let's also check 3 letters. It also should work fine. If I change letters to 1, it also works. And let's check some 5 characters word, for example, car. So right now we have, you have a word between 5 to 6 characters, so it all works properly. And finally, let's write our last 4 different cases. Right here we should be very careful where we'll write these statements. As you see, this arrow shows that if the word is Bob, we will write this message, but let's also check that Bob contains 3 letters. It satisfied our previous condition. It's really important, so we should find the condition of 1 to 4. It's right here, and here we can write our new statement where if the word is Bob. Right now I will use 3 equal operator to say is equal to Bob, and I will write a word with a capital letter. It means that if our input will be with a lowercase letter, this condition will not be satisfied. I wrote our first condition, and let's write else condition for this statement. So else, as we see, I tried my best, but it's too difficult. Let's write the same. Let's also check that it works properly. I will change our word to Bob and save the file, and right now we see that I knew that you make your name, so it was very easy, which works fine. So if I will change first letter to non-capital letter, we will see else statement that this word is too difficult because these 2 strings are different. Right now we can continue with our last 2 statements. Let's find the condition where our word's length is from 5 to 6. I see this message right here. It means that I should write our if statement here. If our word is equal to paper, which also contains 5 characters, so it satisfied our previous condition. In this case, I will write all with the lowercase letters. Let's write the same message. And let's also write an else statement for this condition. Else statement is the same as in our previous condition, but it doesn't mean that we should have only one else statement. We might just copy and paste this message and write it right here. It might be quite tricky once why we don't have 2 separate else statements on the scheme. And I didn't do that in order to give you this tricky moment where you should think like how to make both these conditions possible. And I think that at this point, the easiest way to actually separate them both, but they're actually the same. The content of both this else statement the same. So on the scheme, it might be simplified to just one else statement. Let's try our final code. I will add a little bit entries. Right now we have all lines separate and we might read them clearly. And I might change our input to, let's try paper. If I save the file, we see the change in 2 lines. Our first line says that our word is between 5 to 6 characters, what is true for the word paper. The second line says that your word is paper. If I change this to capital letter, we see that our word's length is from 5 to 6, but our word is too difficult. I also might check, for example, 6 characters, papers. It works the same, and if I add one more character, we will absolutely have another message because our second condition is not satisfied. Our word is equal to 7. It's not less than 7. We have absolutely another else statement. I hope that this challenge wasn't too difficult or too easy for you, but give me the note in the comments. Learn logical operators in JavaScript. There are 3 main logical operators that you will use incredibly often. There are not, and, or logical operators, and one of them you remember from the previous video. I start from a quick reminder. I will write a simple if statement with literal true value inside of the brackets. And I also write an else statement. I have written a simple if statement where if the statement is true, we have a message in the console that this statement is true, and if the statement is false, we have a message that this statement is false. Let's look at the console. To show my console in the browser, I will use a simple HTML file that you might copy and paste, and also live server extension. I will click Go Live button. I will see a new gray window where I can right click, choose Inspect, and choose Console tab. Here we will see two messages. This statement is true and live reload enabled. I can refresh the page by clicking this refresh button. Right now we see only one message in our console. But what happens if I put an exclamation mark that calls logical not operator? I will save the file, and right now we see that this statement is false. The same if I will change this true value to false. I save the file and we see that this statement is true. Logical not operator works as a toggler or inverter. It changes the value to the opposite one. But let's continue with logical AND operator. I'll write logical AND operator as a title, and as you see, this symbol or this sign means AND. I will use the same example, but I will write true and true, and save the file, and right now we see that this statement is true. For example, I have two statements. First statement is true and the second statement is true. And as it contains in one parenthesis, in one if statement, this expression will give the true. The same if I will write false and false. I save the file and you see that this statement is false because our first check is false and our second check is false. The most interesting part of this operator when we have two different statements, when we have two different results in the checks. For example, I have false and true. In this case, we still have false value as the result. To better understand how it works, let's write an example. Let's assume that we have a street that contains houses. So I will write a first variable as let house amount equal to, let's assume 10. The second variable will be villagers, or I will write let people amount. And let's assume that we have 100 people. Let's also agree that in one house can live 10 people. If I have one house, it means that there are living 10 people. And our program should give the message if we have enough houses or not. Let's check if there are enough houses on the street. At first, I will write if statements that we already know. I will write a statement where if house amount, that is 10 in our case, multiply by 10, this is the amount of people that might live in one house, is greater than people amount, that is 100 right now. I will write a message that we have enough houses. If I save the file, we will not see any changes in our console, because if we calculate 10 multiplied by 10 equals 100, and 100 is not more than 100. It means that I should write more or equal to, because if we have 10 houses where can live 10 people, and we have only 100 people, there are enough houses. If I save the file, right now we see this message. Let's also write else statement. I will write a new message that declares that we need more houses. Right now, let's change this number to our actual variable, house amount, and the second variable to people amount. Right now, I might save the file and we still see our first message. If I increase the amount of people, we will see that we need more houses, because right now we have only place for 100 people, but we have 1000 people. If it's clear, let's add one more building, for example, groceries or food stores. Grocery amount equals to, for example, 100. And let's also agree that one grocery might serve 5 people. I also found that I put semicolon, I might delete them, nothing will be changed. And right now we will have a little bit another question. Let's check if there are enough buildings on the street. I will change this question houses to buildings. As you see, grocery is a building and house is a building. Let's write a new solution, but at this point we'll use logical AND operators. What I should actually write, let's think when we have enough buildings. We have enough buildings if we have enough houses and enough groceries. Inside of our if statement, I should write if house amount multiplied by 10 is more or equal to people amount, and if grocery stores multiplied by 5 is also more or equal to people amount, then I should log the message in our console that we have enough buildings. I increased our Visual Studio Code that right now you might see exactly how this huge line looks like. And right here I can write also an else statement that is absolutely the same that we had in our previous example. Now our message will be logged in the console only if we have enough houses and enough grocery amounts. Because as you remember from this example, if we have true and true, we have console log with this statement is true. If one of these conditions is false, then JavaScript shows this statement is false. Let's also check our file and look at the console. And right now we see that we need more houses because we have only one grocery store. But if we change this number to 1000 grocery stores, we see that we have enough buildings. Right now let's talk about logical OR operator. I will delete our previous example, change this title to logical OR operator that looks like this symbol. And let's change this example to true or true. If I save the file, we'll see that this statement is true. It works absolutely identical as AND operator when we have two true statements. Let's also change true to false, and the second one also to false. If I save the file, we see that this statement is false. False or false gives the false value at the result. The only changes that they have is when we have different statements. If I have true or false, this statement is true. This is the main difference between AND and OR logical operators. Let's look at another example to better understand how it works. Let's assume that we have a speed limit and 3 cars, and we want to find have any driver exceeded the speed limit. I wrote 4 different variables. Our first variable is speed limit, that is 90 km per hour or 55 miles per hour. And then I will work with kilometers per hour, and we have a bus with a speed of 50 km per hour, truck that goes 70 km per hour, and sports car that goes 90 km per hour. Let's think how to find if there are any exceeds. If our bus driver exceeds the speed limit, or if the truck exceeds the limit, or if the sports car exceeds the limit, we have speeders. And as you have heard, I used OR in my speech, so I can use OR in our if statements to check this condition. If bus greater than speed limit, or if truck is greater than speed limit, or if sports car is greater than speed limit, we will write a message that there are some speeders. I will write an else statement with the message that no speeders have been detected. Right now we see the message in our console that no speeders have been detected because no one from our list of drivers exceeds the speed limit. But if I change the sports car speed to 100, we will see another message that there are speeders. Let's also calculate the result manually. Bus speed is greater than speed limit. We see that bus speed is less than speed limit, so instead of the statement, we'll have false. I might write false at the result right here, then OR, and I need to look at the another statement separately. Truck greater than speed limit. we see that track speed is less than speed limit, so this statement is also equals to false. Right now we have the last condition that we should check. Sports car is greater than speed limit, and we see that right now sports car's speed is 100 kilometers per hour, which is greater than our speed limit. So instead of this statement, we will have true. As I said, if we have different values, the OR operator will give the true value as the result. To easier calculate the result, I will give you one clue. If you are using OR operator and if any statement is true, the result is true. No matter how much false statements we'll have, we'll see that there are speeders while there are at least one true value. For AND operator, if we have any false statement, the result is false. So the entire expression equals to false. No matter how much true I have, this statement is false because I have one false value. Mastering JavaScript if statements and logical operators with Buckshot Roulette game project. We will write a game logic that is similar to Buckshot Roulette. During this project, we will go over a lot of different topics and details. Let's get started. Let's start from the variables. In this game, we will have two characters, main player and dealer. And they both have limited amount of lives. Our first variable will be player's life amount. I will put right now the number equals to 2 because this is quite small number and it will be convenient to work with that, but we might change this number a little bit later. I will do the same stuff for the dealer. Right now we need to create a bullet. Our bullet might contain two values. First, if the bullet is real, and the second, if the bullet is blank. I will represent them with zeros and ones. Let's assume that if bullet is a blank, this is a 0, and if bullet is a real, it is a 1. You might also ask why we don't use Boolean values like true and false in this situation. And this is because in the future, we don't want to assign the bullet manually to the number of 0 or 1. We want to make a random function that will assign these values for us. When we make a choice where to shoot, we will not know if there is a bullet or not. Our last variable will be player's choice. At this point, I might manually put true or false value in this case. So let's agree that true means choose the dealer, so shoot the dealer, and false means shoot yourself. Let's create a game loop. When we get the input, we should actually analyze and give some result. Let's create the first if statement. For example, it might be the if statement where player choice is true, which means that shoot the dealer, our target is a dealer, and our bullet is 1, which means that bullet is a real. So I write that if player choice equal to true and our bullet equal to 1, then I will put a curly braces and it means that I can write something. For example, console.log this value. To see the changes in our console, I will use a simple HTML file that you might copy and paste, and I will use the live server extension. If you don't know how to connect JavaScript to the browser, I have a video on this topic. I will press a Go Live button, and then in the new window we see a blank page. I should right click, choose inspect, then choose console, and we will see our message with a line that live reload enabled and with a failure of 404. In this case, I should just refresh the page. Right now we see only our message. So it means that our if statement works correctly because as we remember, player choice is true and bullet is 1. Also one detail that you might remember is actually we don't need to provide the literal value of true. So I don't need to write player choice equal to true. I might just delete it. And while this variable is in our if statement, by default it means that if this variable equal to true and then and bullet equal to 1. This thing and the previous one are the same, and that's the reason why I might delete it. To actually write a full game loop, we need to take into account every single outcome. At this point, we have considered only our first outcome, where the player choice equal to true and boolean equal to true. And we said that in this case, the dealer's HP should be decremented. Let's also think which are the possible variables we have. For example, we still have the choice to shoot the dealer, but our bullet is a blank. In this case, I think that we might decrease the amount of lives of the player. Because as you remember the original game, if the bullet is a blank, we just change the term, and right now dealer can shoot the player. To just simplify the logic, let's say that player's HP should be decremented. I also represented the last possible outcomes. They are when player chooses himself and the bullet is real. The outcome is very obvious that the player's HP should be decremented. But when the player chooses himself and the bullet is a blank, we might get some interesting result and, for example, increase the amount of life of the player. In this case, the game will be a little bit more interesting than we just copy and paste the first outcome when dealer's HP might be decremented. Let's write all these if statements in our project. Let's finish our first if statement. As I said earlier, we should decrease the amount of life of the dealer. Let's write that dealer lives equal to dealer lives minus 1. If we put numbers, so right now dealer's life is 2, our dealer lives variable equal to 2 minus 1, which gives 1 as a result. And if we have number 1, 1 minus 1 will give the amount of lives to 0. With every iteration, we will decrement the amount of lives of the dealer. Let's also print another message. For example, you hit the dealer and dealer loses a life. And to make it more interesting, I would recommend you to use emojis that you might just copy and paste from the internet. I personally like to use this website because I can easily copy and paste every single emoji that I want. The next condition that we might write is when the player choice is true, he's still shooting to the dealer, but the bullet is a blank. To cover every possible outcome, I will use else if blocks. Let me explain. If you have only 2 possible outcomes, you might write if and then else. And it means that if the first statement isn't satisfied, the program will do else statement. So when we have this block, we might be 100% sure that one of these blocks will be chosen. But in our case, we have 4 different possible outcomes because we are working with 2 variables. And in this case, else statement means all the remaining 3 blocks. If our if statement isn't satisfied, it still means that I have 3 possible outcomes that might be in our else statement, and I should check every single outcome to be sure that only one is chosen. In this case, I might write an if statement after our else statement right here. The syntax is very simple. I write else, then blank, if, blank, parenthesis, and inside of the parenthesis, I might write the same usual if statement as right here. So I will write that player choice equal to true. At this point, I will remain with a short version of player choice equal to true and bullet equal to 0. In this case, if our first statement isn't chosen or isn't satisfied, our else statement means that we still have 3 different possible outcomes, and then I just have a new if statement that specifically select only one outcome from the 3 possible. It means that at this stage, if this condition is satisfied, our second outcome is chosen. And as you see, we should decrease the amount of lives of the player. Player lives equal to player lives minus 1. And then let's console.log some message. For example, I wrote that, oops, you shoot yourself and you lose a life. I see that I don't see the entire screen, so I will press Alt-Z to wrap our code. And right now you might see that our 15th line is split into 2 lines. And here I might continue. Don't be misled by this double line. If I expand our page, we see that our 15th line is still 1, and this is the same as usual. But at this point, I just don't have enough space for this 15th line, and this is the reason why if I wrap the page, it will be divided by 2 lines. I delete this figure brackets because we should continue from the same yellow bracket that we have in the first column. Here I will continue with the same else if block. Our else statement means that right now, if both these conditions aren't satisfied, it means that we still have 2 remaining ones, and I still should clarify which condition I want to choose. For that, I will write a new if statement, and at this point I will write if player choice equal to false and if bullet is real. I might write in a full version like player choice equal to false, or I might delete this equal to false and just put an exclamation mark before the player choice, which means inversion or logical not operator. Then I put and write that bullet equal to 1. In this case, player lives also should be decremented. And let's write a new message. For example, I wrote that empty shot, dealer counterattacks, and you lose a life. At the end of this block, I again start from the else statement. At this point, it means if all previous checks aren't satisfied, in this case the remaining one is only 1. And it means that I shouldn't even clarify any additional details, and I might be sure that this else block means that player choice equal to false and bullet equal to false. In this case, as you see, we should heal our player. And let's also write a new message. I wrote that lucky break, you gain an extra life. Let's also check if it works. I will change the bullet to 0, save the file, and yeah, we see another message. I also might change player choice to false. And right now we have lucky break because bullet is 0 and player choice is false. And let's return back bullet to 1. And right now we have our third condition that dealer counterattacks and you lose a life. Right now we are sure that all these checks, all our game logic loop is working, and we might just copy and paste it to create a second cycle. And again, if you see this structure that starts from the if statement and finishes with else statement, no matter how much branches we have inside of it, our program will definitely choose one of the options. It means that it will react the user's input and it will change the current condition of the game. By other words, it will interact with a player. Right now we have 2 cycles, but our player can't actually communicate with a game. So let's change this variable into confirm function. If you don't know how confirm function works, you might watch my first project of the game development where I have used this function and explained all the details that you should know. Inside of the confirm function, I put a message where I ask a player, where do you want to shoot? And I also gave some instructions. OK button means shoot the dealer and cancel means shoot yourself. If I save the file, we see this pop-up message and I might choose, for example, shoot the dealer, and we have 2 the same messages that you hit the dealer and dealer loses a life, because when I pressed the OK button, I assigned the true value for the player choice and we see that our bullet is 1. That's very logical why we had this condition, our first branch. But we shouldn't see both conditions or the entire game after our first choice. We should actually reassign this variable after every single cycle. I might just copy this line without let keyword and put it after our first cycle. I also want to write some comments to differentiate the cycles. This is our first cycle, and this is our second cycle. Let's test it. Right now I can press cancel. It means that empty shot, dealer counterattacks, and you lose a life. I actually found that both these branches do the same thing, that they decrement the amount of lives of the player, but the messages are messed up. I should actually change these messages because right now we have a bullet and I chose cancel, so I said false, and this is our third branch, but it means that if the bullet is 1, it means that bullet is real. So we actually shoot ourselves. This is not a dealer counterattack. So I will swap both these messages. If I save the file, I again see this pop-up message, and if I choose cancel, we have that oops, you shoot yourself, which is true because our bullet is 1, so our bullet is real, and by clicking cancel, I assign a false value to our player choice, and we should see this message that we showed ourselves. Now I might choose OK, and we see the message that you hit the dealer, so dealer loses a life. I changed these messages in our first cycle, but it also means that I should change them in our second cycle as well. I will just delete our second cycle, copy and paste our first cycle. Let's also check. If I choose 2 times cancel, I should see the same message in the console. Right now we might press different buttons, but we don't have any purpose in our game. So we should establish a specific goal. Let's delete our second cycle to better understand what happens. And after our first cycle, let's actually write a winning check. I again wrote all the possible outcomes that might be in our game, and let's start from the end. If player lives more than 0 and dealer lives more than 0, it means that we should continue the game. It means that both player and the dealer are alive. And we also have impossible action for our game when the player lives equal to 0 and the dealer lives equal to 0. So we should prevent this outcome. And there are actually only one condition for player wins and one condition for dealer wins. If the player lives more than 0 and dealer lives equal to 0, it means that player is alive and he is the winner. And if dealer lives is more than 0 but player lives is equal to 0, it means that the player is dead and the dealer is a winner. Let's write both these conditions after our first cycle. I will start from the player win. If player lives more than 0 and dealer lives equal to 0, so it means that player wins and we should write this message. I wrote that congratulations, you killed the dealer. And let's also write a second if statement. So I will write it separately, and let's check that if player lives equal to 0 and dealer lives is more than 0, so it means that we are dead. I wrote a message that game over, you died, and dealer wins. To test our winning condition, we should decrease the amount of lives of the player and of the dealer, because we have only one cycle, and after each cycle we might decrease only one life. So I changed the amount of lives of the player and the dealer, and right now if I press OK, we see that you hit a dealer and congratulations, you killed the dealer. And if I choose cancel, we see that you shoot yourself and game over, you died. If we want to create a second cycle, we actually need to copy and paste all the code that we have, because we should check the winning condition after every single cycle. I will copy and paste it. And I might return back the amount of lives and check our game. I will press OK, and we see that you hit the dealer and then you again hit the dealer because we forgot to reassign a player choice. Again, I should copy this line, paste it before the second cycle, and right now if I save the file and choose OK, we can make a new choice. I will press OK again, and we see our winning condition. Let's try to add more cycles. I will just copy the second cycle, paste it, and rename the counter of the cycle. Before I continue to copy and paste additional cycles, I want to show you one problem that we have. I refreshed our game, I choose OK, so you hit the dealer, dealer loses a life, and right now he has 1 life. I can press OK again, and we see that congratulations, you killed the dealer, but we have a new pop-up message, and I should choose something, for example cancel, and we have the congratulations message again. Why it happens? If you look at our scheme, you might see that we want to continue the game only if players' lives more than 0 and dealers' lives more than 0. We don't have this check. So when we have our winning check, we're checking for these 2 outcomes, and then they don't prevent the last outcome that we should finish the game. The easiest solution is to add this check before every single cycle. Let's go to the first cycle and write if player amount of lives is more than 0 and dealer amount of lives is more than 0. In this case, we want to continue the game. But what it means? It means that we want to continue our checks and reactions on the inputs of the player. I should just take all this logic that reacts on the input. I can cut it with Ctrl X and put it inside of our new if statement with Ctrl V. And we see that this block is inside of our if statement check, and it means that we will react on the input of the player only if both player and the dealer have amount of lives more than 0. Right now, again, we should delete all our previous cycles and replace them with this new one. I will delete this game pattern from the second cycle and from the third one. Right now, I might just copy and paste new cycles instead of the old ones. Let's save the file and check if it works. I will do the same stuff. I will click OK and again OK, and we see that congratulations, you killed the dealer, but we again have this message. At this point, if I press any button, I will anyway see the congratulations message twice. If we look at our code, the first thing that we want to ask the player about the choice also only if player's lives and the dealer's lives is more than 0. I will go to our first cycle. Here I'm sure that the player lives and dealer lives is more than 0, so I might remake this confirm message. I should go to the second one and put this message inside of our if statement. I'll do this by Alt and down arrow. Right now we have our message inside of our if statement. I create some additional spaces that we might better distinguish these blocks, and I should do the same process with the first cycle. There's also one problem. I have several winning checks that we needed because at first we had the logic where after every cycle we should check the winning condition. But right now our game reacts on the input, and our input happens only if this if statement with player lives and dealer lives is satisfied. So it means that I don't need to have several winning conditions anymore. So I might delete our first winning condition after our first cycle. I will do the same thing after our second cycle. So it might be a little bit difficult to understand why we actually don't need to have this winning checks after each cycle. And this is all because right now we check that if player's lives is more than 0 and dealer lives is more than 0, we continue the game. But if one of them is equal to 0, it means that all the remaining loops, all the remaining cycles will be skipped, and we can immediately go to our winning checks. Let's also test our changes. If I save the file, I have the message where I can choose, for example, OK. Then I will press OK again, and we see that right now we have a winning message and we don't have any additional pop-ups. Our first cycle was skipped successfully. Let's also try with the defeat block. If I press cancel and cancel again, we see that game over, you died. I see that this project is quite big one, and we still have several important topics to cover. In my next video, we will talk about the random in JavaScript, and we will finish this game project.